Welcome back to Investing Talk podcast.
Good to be here.
Today, we're taking a closer look at GreenWave Technology Solutions, the metal recycling company active in Virginia, North Carolina, and Ohio.
That's right. You sent over quite a bit of material on them.
I did, and the idea is to really unpack what makes this company tick based on that info and figure out the key takeaways for our listeners.
Okay. Well, we've got a good range company basics, recent performance, financials, potential red flags and strengths too.
And market sentiment, their competition, future outlook.
Yep, all that, plus a due diligence report and some early 2025 updates, including, interestingly, their adoption of AI.
AI and metal recycling. Okay, that's something. Well, let's get started and see what really stands out about GreenWave from this information.
Sounds good. So, foundationally, GreenWave runs 13 metal recycling facilities.
Right, and their main business is collecting, processing, and then selling scrap metal, both ferrous and non-ferrous.
Correct. And this feeds directly into steel production and other industries. It's quite fundamental, really.
What caught my eye was their location strategy. They seem very intentionally placed near key industrial and military sites.
That's a key point. Think about being near Naval Station Norfolk or the Port of Virginia.
That gives them consistent access to scrap, I imagine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Consistent supply, potentially lower transport costs.
Yeah.
It's a smart geographical play compared to being further out.
Makes sense. And they're supplying some big names. Nucor, Sims Metal, Cleveland Cliffs, Georgia Pacific is in there too.
And another point from the sources, they focus only on U.S.-sourced recycled metals.
That ties into the next thing, maybe. These operational licenses they have described as grandfathered.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
That's significant. It likely means permits obtained under older, possibly, less strict regulations.
Which makes it harder for new competitors.
Considerably harder. It acts as a real barrier to entry, a kind of regulatory moat, if you will.
Okay, let's talk numbers. This one stood out. They raised their FY 2025 revenue guidance to, $47 to $50 million?
That's right, which is a pretty big jump from the $35.67 million they reported back in FY 2023.
Suggests some serious momentum.
And supporting that, look at the shareholders' equity boost in 2024. One source says about $51 million. Another mentions $55.73 million just in the first 9 months.
Wow, and they cut liabilities too.
By 64% in 2024, according to the info, it definitely paints a picture of financial strengthening.
Okay, so equity up, debt down. And early 2025, they had about $10 million in cash, $7 million in inventory. Sounds pretty solid.
It does, but
Bit of
there's a
gunner.
but. We need to look at the earnings per share.
Ah, right. Negative EPS in recent quarters. I saw a negative $11.84 in Q2 2024 and negative EPS times in Q3.
Correct. So revenue and equity are improving, which is good, but actual profitability, that's still something to watch closely.
And that negative EPS ties into their PE ratio.
It does. A trailing PE of 0.43 basically reflects that current unprofitability compared to potentially profitable peers in the sector, not generating positive earnings relative to the stock price at the moment.
So what's fueling the top-line growth then, despite the bottom-line challenge? Scrap metal prices seem to be a big factor.
Definitely a tailwind, especially with talk of tariffs on steel and aluminum imports. Rising prices help their revenue directly.
And they seem to be actively going after government contracts.
Yes, that's another driver. There's an exclusive contract mentioned for recycling about 550,000 pounds of non-ferrous metal worth around $2 million.
Okay.
And also a municipal contract with Virginia Beach, estimated at over $500,000 initially. These provide a baseline of stable income.
That stability is good. Now, this Nucor development, their new steelmaking facility opening in Lexington, North Carolina, how does that play in?
Potentially huge.
Yeah.
It's expected to significantly boost demand for GreenWave's recycled metals.
Because Nucor will need inputs for that plant.
Exactly. It's a 430,000-ton capacity facility focused on using recycled materials. And GreenWave is right there, geographically well-positioned.
That could be a major long-term customer.
Could be. And looking at the wider picture, potential tariffs on copper imports could also help GreenWave, given their domestic copper supply.
So they're benefiting from these trade dynamics.
It seems that way. Their U.S. source focus really aligns with potential import restrictions.
And it's not just trade policy, right? Regional stuff too, like infrastructure projects.
Yes, the Hampton Roads Bridge tunnel expansion was mentioned. That drives local demand for metals, and GreenWave apparently has contracts tied to it.
So they're catching waves from sort of multiple directions, macro trends, and local projects.
It looks like a strategy of aligning with those favorable winds, yes.
Okay, let's shift gears to technology. This AI element is intriguing. In February 2025, they picked GreenSpark.
Correct. An AI-powered operating system, and it has backing from BMW iVentures, which adds a layer of credibility, perhaps.
And they're rolling it out across operations starting March 2025.
That's the plan. The stated aims are pretty ambitious. Boost operational efficiency, speed up growth, and expand margins.
That's the promise of AI in many industries, isn't it? Bringing that to metal recycling is, well, forward-thinking.
It certainly suggests they're looking for modern ways to optimize what can be a very traditional business.
How are investors taking this?
The information suggests a positive reaction. Investor discussions seem optimistic about the potential efficiency gains from this AI integration.
They see it as a potential competitive advantage.
Likely. Optimizing logistics, processing, maybe even getting better insights into pricing or supply. It could make a real difference if implemented well.
Speaking of competition, how does GreenWave stack up? They're up against giants like Sims Metal and Cleveland-Cliffs.
They are. Those are major established players.
So what are GreenWave's advantages, according to the sources?
Well, we've touched on some. The strategic locations, those grandfathered licenses we discussed.
Right, the regulatory hedge.
And also strong relationships, particularly with Nucor. That seems key. Having reliable buyers for your processed metal is crucial.
And their focus on sustainability, U.S.-sourced recycled metals. That feels very current.
Absolutely. With U.S. steelmakers aiming for over 97% recycled inputs, GreenWave's model fits right in.
It aligns with where the industry seems to be heading. Greener practices, domestic supply chains.
And that specific focus on providing mill-ready shredded metals exclusively from U.S. sources, that could be a real selling point, especially if import rules get tighter.
Okay, but it can't all be smooth sailing. What are the potential challenges or red flags?
A major one highlighted is the dependence on tariffs. Steel and aluminum tariffs are boosting them now, but trade policies can change.
That introduces political risk, essentially.
It does. That reliance is a key factor to watch. Plus, the scrap metal industry itself is just volatile.
Prices go up and down based on global demand.
Precisely. Global supply, demand, economic cycles. It's inherently cyclical, which can impact revenues and profits unpredictably.
And then there are the usual macroeconomic suspects, I suppose. Interest rates, commodity volatility in general.
Of course. Shifts there can affect their operating costs, their pricing power,
Yeah.
The standard external pressures.
So definite risks to keep in mind. How's the overall market sentiment towards GreenWave then?
Generally positive, based on the materials. Recent news seems to highlight their stronger financial position and growth prospects.
Good press helps.
And there were insider share purchases back in December 2024, plus a recapitalization earlier that year. Actions like that often signal internal confidence.
What about analysts?
The notes say analyst sentiment is optimistic, largely because GreenWave seems well-positioned to benefit from those permanent tariffs on imported metals.
Okay, so analysts are buying into the tariff story.
It seems to be a major factor in their assessment. And online investor chatter, from what we have, shows cautious optimism too.
Cautious about what?
Well, optimistic about the AI benefits and the tariffs holding, but maybe cautious given the negative EPS and market volatility. Some speculation about future expansion too.
Okay, so let's try to bring this all together. Looking at everything you shared, GreenWave Technology Solutions. It's an interesting mix.
It really is. You've got a company in a sector getting a boost from current trade policies.
Right. And they're actively winning government contracts, embracing new tech like AI.
And that potential demand spike from the new Nucor facility nearby seems like a very tangible future positive.
Definitely potential there. On the flip side, though,
You have that reliance on tariffs, which is a risk, and the inherent ups and downs of the scrap metal market.
and while the balance sheet looks healthier, more equity, less debt profitability is still lagging, judging by those recent negative EPS figures. That needs to turn around.
Absolutely. Consistent profitability is the missing piece you'd want to see fall into place.
So ultimately, whether GreenWave fits an investor's portfolio really depends on their own view, doesn't it? Their risk tolerance, their outlook on trade policy, the economy.
That's the bottom line. This discussion should give folks a much clearer view of the drivers and risks based on the sources provided.
And as always, this is just based on the information we reviewed today.
We definitely encourage listeners to do their own follow-up research. Check the company's official website press releases. SEC filings are crucial.
And keep an eye on financial news portals for the latest updates. Thanks for digging into GreenWave with me.
My pleasure. It was an interesting case study.
If you found this breakdown valuable, please do subscribe, like the video, and maybe leave a comment. Let us know if you have other questions or companies you'd like us to look into.